أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
طلع البدر علينا من ثنيات الوداع وجب الشكر علينا ما دعا لله داع.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. Alright, so today is the first class that we're going to actually have where we actually cover al-usool al-thalatha. We're actually going to start the book today and no more introductions. And when you start teaching a book, one of the most beneficial du'as to say is يقول المؤلف رحمه الله ونفع الله به وإياكم في الدارين آمين آمين آمين. And this dua is the person who wrote this book, who is responsible for writing this book. May Allah have mercy upon him, and may Allah benefit me and you through him in both abodes. The first abode being this world, the dunya, and the last abode being the akhirah, the afterlife. The first words the author starts in this book is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which roughly translated is in the name of Allah, ba with ism, name, Allah. In the name of Allah, Bismillah ar-Rahman, the indiscriminately merciful. We'll discuss ar-Rahman ar-Rahim next class. And ar-Rahim, the acutely merciful. We're going to discuss Tawheed in Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Tawheed fundamentally is Islamic monotheism, but it's not just that. We talked about this earlier. Linguistically, it means to make one, but it also includes believing in Allah, that He's your Lord, that there is nobody worthy of worship except for Him, and His names and attributes. Along with that, you have to believe in His messenger, and along with that, you have to believe in His deen, Islam. That's Tawheed in a nutshell. And when you say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, you're actually exerting the entirety of Tawheed in one statement. By saying Bismillah, you affirm the entirety of your Islamic belief in that one phrase. We're going to go through that, and we're going to go through, if you read al-usool al-thalatha, you know these phrases, but I'll give a brief definition just as a reminder, inshallah. The first one that we're going to cover is Tawheed al-uluhiyyah, which is also Tawheed al-ubudiyyah. And this is the Tawheed of worship. This deals with the acts of worshipping Allah. And this Tawheed is nullified if you do any act of worship for other than Allah. So for example, if you see that if you want to look really righteous, and you want to look really pious, so you do an extra 2 rak'at sunnah, and you only do it to look pious from beginning to end, this can be a form of disbelief. We're going to get into depth later. That does not make you a non-Muslim. But for example, if you do a fard salah, if you pray duhar from beginning to end just to show off with no other intention for Allah, that will make you a non-Muslim. That is a nullifier of Tawheed al-uluhiyyah. And so even if somebody believes that Allah is one, and he believes in His names and attributes, al-asma' wa sifat, and he believes in those categories of Tawheed, but he doesn't have ubudiyyah or uluhiyyah, he's not a Muslim. So essentially, its worship is only for Allah. When you say Bismillah, you're saying Bismillah, in the name of Allah, Allah allowed me to do this thing. Bismillah, I eat. In the name of Allah, Allah allowed me to eat. I would not be able to eat without the permission of Allah. That's when you say Bismillah before you do something. Adhan Allahu li. Bismillah, if Allah didn't allow me to do this, I wouldn't do it. That's why when you're about to do something haram, mu'adullah, you don't say Bismillah before you do something haram. Because when you say Bismillah, it's in the name of Allah, Allah permitted me to do this thing. But if you're doing something haram, Allah didn't permit you to do it. So if somebody is drinking alcohol, and you see this in the Middle East sometimes, if somebody is about to drink alcohol and they say Bismillah, they actually get two sins. They get the sin of saying Bismillah before drinking the alcohol, and they get the sin of drinking the alcohol. Because Allah did not permit it, and by saying Bismillah, they're saying that Allah did permit it, which is not true, and you cannot make halal what Allah made haram. That's Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah in terms of Bismillah. Allah allowed me to do this. I'm doing it only for the sake of Allah, because we talked about it's worship, right? So when you say Bismillah, I do something, it has to be exclusively for the sake of Allah. So in the name of Allah, He allowed me to do this. He gave me the power to do this, and I'm doing it only for His sake. That is Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah in Bismillah. The next one is Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. And in a nutshell, Tawheed al-Rububiyyah is acknowledging that Allah is your Rabb, that Allah is your Lord. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. The first ayah that we learn after Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, the first ayah is Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Before we even know who Allah is, we know He's our Rabb. So this is the first step that people take into Tawheed. A Hindu, a Sikh, even Quraysh had this form of Tawheed, acknowledging that Allah is your Lord. If you asked Quraysh, the polytheists, the kafir, mushrikeen, if you asked them who is your Lord, they would have said our Lord is just Allah. But they were deficient in the other Tawheeds. So this is the most basic Tawheed, acknowledging that Allah is your Lord and that He has all power over you. So when you're writing these notes, which you should be doing, who is the one who gave you the power to write? Allah gave you the power to write. That's Tawheed al-Rububiyyah in Bismillah. So when you say Bismillah, you're saying, I couldn't have done this unless Allah gave me the power to do this. Because Allah is a Rabb. Allah has control over everything. Over every atom, over every subatomic particle, over every galaxy, over the entirety of the cosmos. Allah has control over everything constantly. So when you say Bismillah, you're saying Allah gave me the power to do this. And that is affirming Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. And so when you say Bismillah, I eat, it's because Allah gave me this food, this provision to eat. And if it had not been for the power Allah has given me, if Allah didn't make my hand capable, I wouldn't be able to move my hand to my mouth to be able to eat. It would be paralyzed. If He didn't give me the strength, I wouldn't be able to chew it. Bismillah, I write. Because if Allah hadn't given me the power to write, I wouldn't be able to inscribe notes on a piece of paper. It's similar to saying La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There is no power and no minute movement except through Allah. And that's why Allah says He says in Surah Al-Nahl, وَمَا بَكُمْ مَنْ نِعْمَةٍ فَمَنَ اللَّهَ. And whatever you have of favor, it's from Allah. And the rest of the ayah is, then when adversity touches you, you cry to Allah, you cry to Him for help. That's the proof for this. Every provision is from Allah. Everything that you get, all your rizq is from Allah, and we'll get into that later. And that's the second aspect of Tawheed in Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The third aspect is al-asma' wa sifat. The names, asma' ism, be-ism, with the name of asma'. The names of Allah, what sifat, the attributes of Allah. And so when you use asma' wa sifat, you're seeking the blessing by the name of Allah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, or Bismillah, in the name of Allah, I ask Allah to give me blessing in this thing that I'm about to do. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. These are names and attributes of Allah that we're going to discuss later, inshallah, next class. We'll discuss specifically what Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim are, along with the name Allah. And so this applies to any matter you say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim to, any matter you say the Basmala to. And simply put, the Basmala is what Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is. When you say Allahu Akbar, the act of saying Allahu Akbar is takbir. When you say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, that act is called the Basmala. And so when you say Bismillah to eat, or Bismillah to take an exam, you're asking Allah to bless you when you sit or you eat or you turn on the lights or you walk. You're asking Allah to bless you with the name of Allah, Bismillah, and Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. You're asking for blessings through the names of Allah. So when we talked about Allah giving us the power to eat or write, that's rububiyyah. And then we talked about doing it for the sake of Allah, by the permission of Allah, only because He made it halal for you to do, that's rububiyyah. And then we talked about al-isma' wa sifat. So now you understand the wisdom behind Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and now when you say it, you understand that you have a comprehensive Tawheed when you say it, and you're saying it with that understanding, not just because you're told to say it. Every time you say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, these things should run through your head. And so now we're going to discuss the linguistic rules in Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. الجر والمجرور في البسملة متعلقون بالمحذوف تقديره في اللائق بالمقام. This is a linguistic principle that we're going to discuss. So the ba in Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, or just in Bismillah, is isti'ana and tawakkul. Isti'ana is seeking the help of Allah. Is in Surah Al-Fatiha, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين.
That's isti'ana. Tawakkul is having full reliance upon Allah. The ba in Bismillah, in the name of Allah, with the ism of Allah, that's what that is. Isti'ana and tawakkul. To seek help and to have dependence upon Allah. And that's what that grammatical rule we mentioned is. الجر والمجرور في البسملتين متعلق بالمحذوف تقديره في اللائق بالمقام. And so when you say Bismillah in Arabic, it automatically implies that thing that you're saying Bismillah to. What do I mean by this? When you say Bismillah, you don't have to say Bismillah ba'akul. You don't have to say in the name of Allah I eat, or in the name of Allah I drink, or in the name of Allah I walk. It's automatically implied by you saying Bismillah that in the name of Allah applies to that which follows it. It's one of the blessings of the Arabic language is that it eliminates the need to specifically mention that which follows the Basmala. You just need to say Bismillah, and it implies that you're saying Bismillah I eat. You don't need to, and you shouldn't tag on the word I eat or I drink. And so when you write, it automatically comes Bismillah I write. And that's the grammatical rule. الجر والمجرور في البسملتين متعلق بالمحذوف تقديره في اللائق بالمقام. And so we're always saying Bismillah I eat. We never say I eat Bismillah. We're always putting the action behind the name of Allah. That's very important. There's a big difference. Why is it we only say Bismillah I eat and not I eat Bismillah? This is another grammatical rule. تأخير الأعمال يفيد الحصر. And the scholars of Nahu, of Arabic grammar, say that this is for two reasons. The reason why we say Bismillah and then the thing follows instead of saying I eat Bismillah, this is why. There's two reasons. The first reason is that you want the name of Allah to be first in the sentence. You want to prioritize saying the name of Allah because that's a worship. You want the worship in case, let's say you're about to say Bismillah I eat and then you die. What if you don't get to say I eat? If you said Bismillah, you're going to get reward. But if you just said I eat, what's meritorious about that? And so you want the name of Allah to come first and to bless it. That slight change makes a huge difference. And also, when we're talking about تَخْيِرَ الْأَعْمَالِ يُفِيدُ الْحَصْرِ, we're talking about that rule. What that rule means is, by putting the name of Allah first, you make it exclusively for Him. If you say, for Furqan I bring this food, does that mean Zakaria can have some food? In Arabic it doesn't. But if I said I bring this food for Furqan, since I brought the food first, Furqan is an additive. That means Zakaria can also be an additive and he can also eat. So by saying Bismillah, eat, by putting it first, you're saying that thing that comes after the name of Allah is only for Allah and no one else can take a part of it. That is part of Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, that there's nobody else besides Allah. And so delaying the name of Allah means that it can apply to others as well. Bismillah, I eat, and by nobody else, with nobody else's name do I eat except for yours, Ya Allah. Only for you, Ya Allah, I write. Only for you, Ya Allah, I sit. There's nobody else who can be added at the end of that grammatically and in terms of our aqeedah. So now we need proofs. What are the proofs for beginning with Bismillah or Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim? So why does the author even start with Bismillah? And we're claiming that starting with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is an ibadah, it's a worship. So when you do an ibadah, the burden of proof is on you to bring proof. If you claim a certain worship, you have to bring proof. If I claim that it's sunnah to add Surah Al-Ikhlas after every second surah in Salah, I have to bring proof. Every person has to bring proof for an ibadah. Nobody can bring an ibadah without proof. So what about this? I'm telling you that you have to bring proof for every ibadah, right? What's my proof that you have to bring proof to bring an ibadah? Islam covers everything, even something as minute as that. Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, the Sufi Sheikh, said in his collection of 40 ahadith, hadith number 33, on the authority of Ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu wa ardah, that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, were people to be given everything that they claimed, men would unjustly claim the wealth and lives of other people. But the onus of proof is upon the claimant, and the taking of oath is upon him who denies. So anytime you say something, this is a general rule in Sharia and fiqh. If you say something, you have to bring proof. And this is most important when it comes to Islam. You have to give proof. So that is the proof. This hadith is a Hasan hadith, it's a good hadith, narrated by Al-Bayhaqi and others in this form. And part of it is in the two Sahihs, Bukhari and Muslim. So it's a very good hadith. And we see nowadays, the kuffar have tried to bring this part of Islam into their lives because they saw how beneficial this is. If you take a class of logic, this is called the burden of proof. The burden of proof is upon the claimant. And so I have to give you proof that the Basmala is good to say before something. So the first of the proofs that we're going to give is that it's in accordance with the Qur'an. There are 114 Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim in Al-Quran. But there are only 113 Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim at the beginning of surahs. One surah doesn't have Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. That is Surah Al-Tawbah. Because the circumstances around Surah Al-Tawbah, Allah did not want to emphasize Rahmah. He starts it, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم براءة من الله ورسوله. He starts it by distancing himself a total distance from the kuffar. So Allah didn't want to emphasize Rahmah in that surah. However, in Surah An-Naml, Allah says, إِنَّهُ مَنْ سُلَيْمَانَ وَإِنَّهُ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ. In Surah An-Naml, indeed it is from Sulaiman, alayhi salatu wasalam. And indeed it reads, in the name of Allah, the indiscriminately merciful, the acutely merciful. Surah An-Naml, which is surah number 27, ayah number 30. So there's another Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim in Surah An-Naml to compensate for the one missing in Surah At-Tawbah. Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu said that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam tasliman kathira said that he didn't know the beginning or end of a surah except through Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. When he saw Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, that helped him distinguish the beginning and the end of surahs. So that's the first proof, is that Allah began the surahs of the Qur'an with the Basmala. The second proof is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, salat, began his letters with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In Bukhari and in Muslim, in the two Sahihs, Rasulullah ﷺ said to Heraclius, the leader of Rome at the time, he sent him a letter inviting him to Islam. And he started the letter with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The letter starts, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. من محمد عبد الله ورسوله إلى هرقل العظيم عظيم الروم السلام على من تبع الهدى أما بعد. So you see the sunnahs here. He started with Bismillah. He addressed the person he wanted to address, Hiraqul Azim al-Rum, the strongest of Rum, the head of Rum. Amma ba'd, asked for what follows, and then he began his letter. So that's why when somebody's giving khutbah, they say Amma ba'd at the end, ask for what follows. And the translation of this is, from Muhammad, the slave of Allah, his messenger, to Heracles, the leader of Rome. May peace be upon those who follow guidance. As for what follows. And then he began the letter. So Muhammad made a treaty with Quraysh. Suhail ibn Amr, he came to do the treaty and arbitrate between Muhammad and Quraysh. And he told Ali, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu warda, Aktib Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He told him, write in the name of Allah, the indiscriminately merciful, the acutely merciful. And Az-Zuhri narrated a similar hadith. Ibn Hajar said that it is the trend of the scholars that they settled upon. It's the agreement of the scholars that they start their works Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu arda, the beloved of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the one he loved the most after Aisha radiallahu anha, he did the same. When he wrote a letter to Anas ibn Malik, when he was in Bahrain, he wrote the letter and he started with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So it's the sunnah of Muhammad, it's the sunnah of the ulama, it's the sunnah of the Sahaba, and the best of Sahaba, and the best of men to come after the Anbiya, Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu. There is an alleged hadith, there's a weak hadith that says, whatever matter that does not start with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is cut off from all good. This hadith is weak. And in the hadith, in Arabic, it mentions aqta', and another narration mentions abtar. So whatever matter is not begun with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, it's either aqta' or abtar from good. This hadith is narrated in Ibn Hibban and in other books, but it's weak. Ibn Hajar weakened it, Suyuti weakened it, Albani weakened it, amongst other ulama. And some ulama tried really hard to authenticate this hadith, but in the end it is a weak hadith. And if this hadith was good, if it was Hasan, we wouldn't have to mention any other proofs, but it's weak, so it's good to corroborate with other ahadith. We'll discuss the usage of other ahadith later. There's actually an entire booklet, and see, this is how detailed the ulama are. There's actually an entire booklet on how weak this hadith is, and it's Al-Aqawil Al-Mufassa'a Al-Bayan Hadith Ibtida' Bil-Basmala. And this is from Sheikh Al-Kitani, who died roughly 80 years ago, a famous scholar from the Islamic Maghrib, which is in Africa. Rahmatullah alayh. So you know the weak hadith, you know the proof from the Qur'an, you know the proof from the Sunnah, you know that the ulama did it, and you know that the Sahaba did it. So what are the blessings of starting with the Basmala, with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim? We say Bismillah to bless whatever we say Bismillah upon. So whenever we say Bismillah, it blesses that which comes after it. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, to bless whatever act you're doing. In the name of Allah, Allah bless this. Islam encourages saying Bismillah in whatever setting you're doing, you're in, except for haram. So even when you're riding, when you get in a car or a camel or a horse, Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam told his people, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, أركبوا فيها Bismillah. And this is in Surah Al-Hud, Surah 11, ayah number 41. Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam said to his people, and Nuh said, embark therein in the name of Allah. And the rest of the ayah is its course and its anchorage. Indeed, my Lord is forgiving and merciful. When you're gonna sacrifice, Surah Al-An'am, ayah number 118.
فأكلوا مما ذكر اسم الله عليه.
مما ذكر اسم الله عليه. So eat of that meat upon which the name of Allah has been mentioned. And then the rest of the ayah is, if you are believers in His ayat, in His verses. So you say Allah before you eat. You say the name of Allah before you eat. You say the name of Allah before you drink. And in Bukhari and Muslim, Umar ibn Abi Salama said, radiallahu anhu, that Muhammad told him, Sami Allahi wa akul biya minnaka wa akul minna yalika. So when you eat with the name of Allah. And even before you have marital relationships with your wife, with your spouse, you say the dua to say is, Bismillah Allahumma janibna al-shaytan. وجنبنا الشيطان ما رزقتنا جنبنا من الشيطان ما رزقتنا. And the translation of this is, I'm having relations in the name of Allah. Oh Allah, save us from shaitan and keep him away from the children that you grant us. And that is from the child that you, if Allah blesses you with a child after a relationship with your wife. That is in Bukhari and Muslim. When you turn the lights off, or when you're closing a bottle even. Jabir ibn Abdullah radiallahu ta'ala anhu in Bukhari and Muslim said that Muhammad said, when you close your bottle and when you turn on your light, say so in the name of Allah, with Bismillah. So we should get used to saying the name of Allah in everything so that Allah might put barakah in our lives, inshaAllah. This is one of the reasons that we find that we don't have a lot of barakah in our lives. Allahumma musta'an, may Allah protect us from that. Is because we don't say the name of Allah enough. When we resort to materialistic means Allah, instead of resorting to Allah and having our tawakkul and our full trust in Allah. And when we say Bismillah, we affirm our full Tawheed. And when we discuss asma' wa sifat, we'll know that this includes knowing that our wealth is written, knowing that our lives are written, knowing that our spouses are written. So when you affirm this constantly, it becomes very difficult to worry or become distressed. And you gain a lot of barakah in your life. Bismillah is one of the means to gain barakah from Allah in everything that you do, whether halal or mubah. And it's one of the ways that you can protect yourself from a sin. If you're about to go and do a sin and you find yourself saying Bismillah, you'll feel so ashamed that you'll leave the sin. It's one of the ways that Allah protects those who He wants to protect. And in Surah Al-A'raf, ayah number 96, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولك أن أهل القرى آمنوا واتقوا لا فتحنا عليهم بركات من السماء والأرض. If the people of the towns had given themselves the conviction, amanu, and they had God consciousness, taqwa, they were always remembering themselves of Allah, certainly we would have opened it for them barakah, blessings from the samai, from the heavens, and from the earth. So Allah is telling you that if you constantly remember Him, you have iman, alhamdulillah, you're Muslim. Now all you need is this constant taqwa, which is found through saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim constantly. Allah will open for you blessing from the heavens and the earth. All you have to do is say Bismillah. All you have to do is just say this word, which barely requires you to move your tongue. It's one of the easiest things to say. So if you wonder why there's no blessings in our times, in our food, in our recitation of the Qur'an, in our sleep, you wonder why the ulama can sleep 4 hours, be rested and work for 20 hours, but we need 12 hours and we're still tired. Part of the reason of that, besides biological reasons, is that we have no barakah. And the biological reasons are from Allah, because we have no barakah. You need to reflect and ask yourself, how many times have I said Bismillah, knowing its full meaning, with full conviction in it, meaning it when I do that act? If you do that every time, if you do that when you turn on your lights and when you open your bottle and when you close your bottle, you'll find incredible barakah. Because you're delegating all of your actions to Allah. And if all of your actions are delegated to Allah, then how are you going to find fault in your own weaknesses, or how are you going to have distress? So just listening to this glimpse today, you should come out with a completely different perspective on the Basmala. So today's dars is not very long, that's all it is. The homework is going to be to read to page 10 of the elucidation of Sheikh Uthaymeens, Sheikh Uthaymeens, is to memorize up to Surah Al-Asr and to review the notes. So, the usool thalatha is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. That's the first part. اعلم رحمك الله أن يجب علينا تعلم 40 مسائل. الأولى العلم وهو معرفة الله ومعرفة نبيه ومعرفة دينه الإسلامي بالدلة. الثانية العمل به. الثالثة الدعوة عليه. الرابع الصبر في الأتى فيه. ودليله قوله تعالى بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Memorize until that. And in English, that is, in the name of Allah, the indiscriminately merciful, the acutely merciful. I'lam rahimakallah. No, may Allah have mercy upon you. That is obligatory for us to learn 4 matters. The first is knowledge. That is knowledge of Allah, knowledge of His Messenger, knowledge of His religion with proofs, His deen with proofs. The second is acting upon that. The third is calling to it, dawah. The fourth is sabr fi atafi, patience upon the hardships that you'll come across. And the proof for this is dalilahu qawluhu ta'ala, the exalted said, in the name of Allah, the indiscriminately merciful, the acutely merciful, by time, wal asr innal insana lafi khusr, verily mankind is in loss, deep loss, illa alladhina amanu, except those who have given themselves a conviction, wa amilu salihati, and who do righteous deeds, wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr, and who call each other to truth and who call each other to patience. The next class is going to be the names of Allah, starting with Allah, Ar-Rahman, and then Ar-Rahim. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله فإنه هو الغفور الرحيم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفر وأتوب عليه. وآخر دعواتنا الحمد لله رب العالمين. Questions? That's it.